Today we're going to cover a pretty important topic. My name is Kevin Shane. I am the Director of Marketing for NetSource Media and NetSource Technologies. For those of you who aren't familiar with NetSource, we're a full-service digital marketing agency with expertise in a couple of different industries, including dealership marketing, construction, healthcare, and a range of other different fields. So a couple quick housekeeping items. Our guest speaker is going to move pretty quickly today, so we're probably going to be done in about 25 to 30 minutes. And we're going to have a opportunity to obtain an free ADA assessment that's valued at $1,000. So hang with us, and at the end we'll be able to provide you with that information. So I don't want to delay things, so I'm going to jump right in there. And today's guest speaker is Ellie Friedman, and he, aside from being our accessibility and AI expert, he really has some firsthand experience dealing with ADA issues in his own family. So maybe he can talk about that just a little bit more. So let me, I guess probably the best thing to do is just, talk a little bit about how compliance is really, there's two sides to it. There's the usability side, but now there's also a big legal side to it. So you can kick this off and get us going here.
Thank you, Kevin, very much. And hello, and thanks for joining everybody here today. I hope that you're doing all well. And again, my name is Eli Friedman, and I'm part of the partnerships team as well as the ADA and web accessibility specialist here at NetSource. So I'll be leading our webinar today about ADA and web accessibility. And wanted to start off by saying over the past decade, I've been leading strategic business roles in several tech sectors, from low tech to high tech, and now with NetSource. My focus has been primarily in web accessibility and ensuring that our website, and of course that of our customers, websites become accessible for people with disabilities. So again, before I get started, I hope you don't mind that I share a personal story of mine. Some time ago, my wife was diagnosed with a very severe herniated disc. She was completely immobile for a year. So during that time, she endured excruciating pain, both physically and mentally. I do have 3 small children under 6, so seeing them and her like that was also very painful for them. I saw that firsthand, and I never had to adjust for anyone in my life due to a disability up until this point. And what really struck me was how severely even a temporary disability could impact the way that you live your life. So during this time, we really began to appreciate the little things and the big things. So the internet was much more because of the few things that enabled my wife to participate in what we might call a normal life. And she used it for meditated exercises, shopping for food for the family, researching your issue, and finding support groups to really help her throughout that time in her life. This was an incredible coping mechanism that made a deeply positive impact on her and her life, and of course her family lives as well. So when I contemplated how it might be for someone with a heavy motor impairment or full-on blindness, let's say, to attempt to do the same, I realized it's significantly harder. So people with disabilities already have enough things to deal with on a day-to-day basis. We don't necessarily need to make it harder on them with inaccessible websites. So we really need to proactively make sure that these websites welcome people with disabilities. I'd really appreciate for you guys letting me share my story. And what we'll be discussing today is what is web accessibility and why should I care? And the presentation topics are what is web accessibility, a little bit about the regulations and risks, and the market, and of course the missed opportunity, finally leading up to the free audit, which everybody here will receive at the end of the presentation. So let's start off with the basics. What is web accessibility? Simply put, it's a set of rules, behaviors, code standards, and design guidelines that were meant to allow people with disabilities to effectively use websites. Now, there's a very important point we're differentiating effectively from equally. So I cannot give a fully blind person an entire equally experience to a sighted person on a website, let's say like Netflix. I can, however, give them the same ability to extract information and use the website. So that being said, it's not just about the blind, it's about the very wide range of disabilities that can impact how people use the internet. So there's arguably 50 plus disabilities that are out there that limit users' ability to access the web efficiently, And there's an enormous population of folks aging into disabilities that require accessibility for websites, as well as veterans still suffering from combat injuries. And one of the most prevalent reasons for someone who might need a screen reader is, for instance, dyslexia, or of course, full-on blindness. But dyslexia is the most common learning disability among American children. Now, what are the regulations here? The laws in question here are ADA Title III, so American Disabilities Act Title III, and Section 508. So in the US, Section 508 refers to government agencies mostly. Small businesses fall under Title III. So there's a misconception that businesses with 15 plus employees do not need to make their websites accessible. This is really incorrect. There is a clause in Title I, which is also part of the ADA, and this is where most businesses do not need to accommodate to their employees, but they do need to accommodate to the public. So pretty much all of the global laws refer to the WCAG, or the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. They're the only internationally recognized set of standards, and the WCAG is basically a 1,000-page guidebook that explains what websites look like and operate like to people with disabilities. Now, Section 508 refers to specifically the WCAG 2.0 standards and requires adherence to those standards. So the ADA is an old law that hasn't really been updated much, and in fact doesn't say anything about websites in the letter of the law at all. However, the DOJ released in a ruling in 2018 stating that websites are now considered places of public accommodation and now must comply with Title III of the ADA. Originally, it only pertained to physical locations, handrails in bathrooms, of course, ramps for people with wheelchairs, widened hallways and things like that. So there are a number of other regulations. So the same is now being applied to the online space, and understanding what those rules look like for people with disabilities trying to engage with websites. A little bit about the risks that are involved over here, and lawsuits are now becoming commonplace, more and more prevalent as we move into the digital age, with dozens of law firms issuing demand letters every single day, and millions of people who are being disenfranchised, literally. So as you can see, that 2019 more than tripled 2018 in the number of papers served. This has been a 200% year-over-year average, an increase in demand letters and lawsuits for ADA website compliance, or lack thereof, I should say. Now, this means that for every business hour in 2019, there was a demand letter served, and we see the same trend happening in 2020. I want to lightly elaborate on some types of the cases that are out there, and you can, of course, check this out on your own. But Guillermo versus Domino's case, and this was in October of 2018. So the US Supreme Court rejected Domino's appeal to hear their 2016 lawsuit of Robles versus Domino's. That's when it was spawned. Domino's Pizza we're talking about here, by the way, and whether a blind man's failure to order a pizza from its website basically violated the American Disabilities Act. So Domino's then appealed to the decision to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court denied Domino's request, and now they're handling it in a lower court decision. You might think that this only applies to giants like Domino's. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Emily Fuller is a disabled resident of Broward County, Florida. She's very serious about making websites complying with the Disabilities Act, and that's because she's on the forefront of getting websites to accommodate to people like her. As a matter of fact, she is now suing 185 business owners whose websites do not comply with ADA or web accessibility standards. In e-commerce, seen e-commerce businesses as low as $1 million a year having to settle in at minimal the mid 5 figures. So it's definitely not in best interest to just wait around like a sitting duck to ensure that your website's accessible because of these issues that we're facing. This brings us to show how we can make a website accessible. So there are 3 major options that are out there: accessibility plugins, there are fully automated AI solutions, which is ours, and manual solutions. So first and foremost, accessibility plugins, they're generally free or low cost, like UserWay or WP Access. And while they're able to make some adjustments and changes, they amount to only 15% of the requirements from the WCAG. This is simply not enough to go to court with, to say the least, nor most importantly, it does not help people with disabilities. So if you imagine trying to order tickets for a movie online and halfway through the process you find the submission form doesn't work, that is what happens when you use plugins like these. They do not cover 75 and 85%. Manual services very much do achieve compliance and accessibility. The issue is that you're hiring real people to do a skilled technical job all the time. So they need to conform your website's design in favor of accessibility, And there are very specific types, and just to explain, there are very specific types of fonts, sizes, color contrast ratios, colors that are able to be used when designing the website, which puts a damper on the creative process, costs more money, but you as a website owner as well. So you desire to achieve a specific design for your brand and company. However, you're unable to because of the WCAG doesn't necessarily allow you to. Now, with manual remediation, the initial project can take anywhere from 3 weeks to 6 months to complete, but regardless of the project length, you'll be required for ongoing maintenance for as long as you keep updating your website. So every single time you put on a new product, a picture, content, article, etc., those two need to be remediated, and this inherently costs more time and more money as well. So on average, even small websites under 1,000 pages, they can cost easily $15,000 per year. That doesn't include the audit, which is the piece of paper that those manual experts say is wrong with your website in regards to ADA compliance and accessibility. And that also doesn't include the ongoing maintenance or retainer cost. So each time you need to consider what you need to upload to your website or have your webmaster or your web development agency do so, that's going to cost more time and more money. So you have to consider that manual services will necessarily be more expensive because you're paying for very skilled labor, and again, take longer for that reason. So I want to go into a quick live demonstration. If you can just bear with me for 1 second, I'm going to go into a demo site here. And as you can see, this demo site is, there's no accessibility work done to it whatsoever. The only thing that has been done is our accessibility interface has been installed on it, as you can see here. Now, this is for the 15 to 20% of the requirements in the WCAG, which mostly pertains to people with low visual impairments, cognitive or learning disabilities, epilepsy, and a number of other ones. Basically, those who can see and engage with the screen, they need to be able to adjust it according to their specific disability. I'd also like to put into account that this interface actually replaces the old-fashioned method of compromising the website's design in favor of accessibility. So instead of changing your whole website from the design process from the get-go, in order for it to be accessible, you needed those specific font sizes, color contrast ratios, etc. Now you can actually achieve both of those and have the best of both worlds by having the solution installed on your website and also maintaining your brand value and, of course, the design of your website that you desired. Now, we'll start off at the top. I would like to tell you that for localization purposes, you have 14 different languages here available. We just added 2 last month. And we'll start off with the adjustments that you have here. So there's some general adjustments. These are general presettings. So for epilepsy, visually impaired, cognitive, ADHD, blind users and keyboard navigation, these are all specific. However, if you wanted to individually adjust the website's design in order to accommodate to those disabilities, you actually have the option to do so. So just for instance, if you see this headline over here, you might see these spikes. Now, this might look unreadable or even smudged to somebody with low visual impairments. By pressing the readable font button, this actually converts back to the user's default font, which is now more readable to them. You have things like content scaling, highlight of titles and links. This helps people with cognitive or learning disabilities, those from the elderly community that have a difficulty in deciphering what element is what. And you also have adjustments of font sizing, line height, letter spacing, and you also have some alignment adjustments here as well. Okay, let's say, for instance, somebody who has color blindness. There are over 100 pages within the WCAG of just specific color contrast ratios. Again, so that you prevent having to conform your website's design to accommodate to that. You actually have some general presettings over here like monochrome, light contrast, dark contrast, high saturation, high contrast, and low saturation. We also have adjustments of text colors, title colors, and background colors. This is all just in case that specific user needs a little bit more assistance in the color contrast ratios that they specifically need. Now, when it comes to epileptic users, there is a requirement for, it's very easy to onset epileptic users or epilepsy. So what we do, and what is another requirement, is have a stop animations button. So if you can see over here, this flashing GIF over here, there's also an automatic video down here, excuse me. And what happens when you press epilepsy safe profile, it instantly stops everything, including the flashing GIF over here, all without having to touch your source code, all on the fly and all on the session by the user. And now they can navigate through the website safely. If they wanted to just ping that off, they can turn it off at any time and go back with the default or original design of the website. Now, there are, I guess, 50 plus adjustments within this interface. You can go ahead and play around with it on your own time should you like. One of the last adjustments that I'll show you before we jump off to the next part of the demonstration is the online dictionary. This is not a WCAG requirement, but we always want to try to enrich the user experience as much as possible. People with learning or cognitive disabilities focus. So things as simple as going in and out of screens to learn certain terminologies, concepts, abbreviations, etc., that might be found on such website. You can essentially tap into this online dictionary, which is hooked up to several different resources, and you can literally search for anything. You can look for binge watching. You can look for orca whales, quantum physics, FHA, anything you possibly want, all so that they can maintain their focus and enjoy the navigation and, of course, your website's experience. Now, I'll close this, and what I'm going to do is we'll go through a quick simulation of how a person with disabilities, let's say a fully blind person using a screen reader and using the keyboard only to navigate. So the first thing that one will do when they come into a website to check to see if it's actually accessible is press the tab key, which I'm doing now. Now with a screen reader, it'll tell the user to turn on accessibility mode by pressing Alt+1, which I'm doing now. Now there is a chime that went off, and basically that's a success message telling the user that it's been turned on successfully, and now they can continue navigating through the website. The first thing that pops up you can see is, oh, excuse me. Let me turn this off and on once more. So the first thing that you would do when you come into a website is press the tab key, and it tells the user to turn on accessibility mode by pressing Alt+1, which I'm doing once more. It's been turned on, and now you can see that there's a couple options to skip the content, or it opens up this quick navigation bar. This quick navigation bar, let me move my mouse, it enables the user to navigate through the entire website without having to go through the entire website all with their keyboard, and so they can do what they need to do and leave once they're done. If they wanted to continue to experience the entire website, they can do so by pressing Escape or Tab, which I'm doing now. And as you can see that there's an emphasis around each link, and this will also be announced: LinkedIn new window, Instagram new window, free worldwide shipping over, for orders over $50. The search field as well, it'll tell them that there is a search field here in order to check for certain items or offerings that you might find on your website. It'll also prompt collapsible menus. This is a huge oversight for people developing their websites. If you don't know how to actually develop that, then it'll essentially just completely lay over this drop-down menu, if you will, and then continue on to blog, which is where a lot of websites actually falter in and where a lot of litigation actually comes in from as well. So I see blog, contact, and it will also allow you to easily navigate the slider here. It will also allow you to prompt a pop-up. And as you can see, I can increase, decrease quantities, proceed to checkout, or I can press escape to opt out. There are so many websites that are notorious for having pop-ups or new banners or new offerings, essentially, that the user they're not able to opt out of it. So there is no key on the keyboard that will allow you to opt out of it. In most cases, the user actually has to shut down manually their computer and then restart it so that they can access the web once again. It's a huge damper on their experience, and again, that's where much of the litigation comes in from and what our solution really excels in remediating, again, on the fly. So as you can see, I continue. The navigation orientation needs to be left to right, top to bottom, as far as the requirements goes. I don't mean to bore you too many with these requirements, but I want to show you how robust and efficient our system is actually and what it's doing in the process. So that was a simulation. What I want to do is I want to show you our AI process. This is by far the coolest part about this. We're utilizing several different technologies. First and foremost is OCR and Iris. We have a few proprietary that I wouldn't necessarily be able to share, but OCR is optical character recognition technology, and we also have Iris, which is image recognition technology. What they do is they scan and learn the image as well as the text that's embedded within the image, and then provide the correct alternative tag for that specific picture. So I'll give you an example of this. This right here, you can see that there's something obviously going on in the scene, a lady handling clothing, there's text embedded within it, and there's also a shop now link here. But when I look in the back end, you can see here that there is no alt tag for this image. So there is nothing that's going to be read aloud to say somebody with, using a screen reader coming to your website. They hover over this picture, nothing will be said. There is no enrichment of the experience there, and it doesn't give any context. So this is a huge thing that we need to take care of, and the way that we do that is with our AI. So when I press Alt-1, turning on accessibility mode once more, I want to show you what it does in the back end. Now, I hope everybody can see my console here. It says extra sale, 30% off shop now, shopping, stock, and shop. And you can see that there's a new product page that's going to be prompted. So it'll actually announce that there's a new product page and what's inside of the image here, giving more context and enabling the user to go ahead and peruse through your website and, of course, opt into your offerings or purchase your products easily. Now, I'm going to show you a number of different elements to show you on the back end how it works and make sure that we're not a one-trick pony here. So if we look at Facebook, this is not the appropriate screen reader text that's been assigned to it. It will read out nothing when hovering over it. The same thing goes with Google+. This is not the right screen reader text that's been assigned to it. There's nothing there. Same thing goes with Instagram. Favorites, also not the correct screen reader text. There's no context here, nor here. Let's do Abercrombie & Fitch as well. So this image does not have any alt tags. So the person does not know what they're hovering over when they get to this element over here. Same thing goes with this picture here. You can see that there's scriptive language overlapping. There's several different layers. It's kind of a decorative abstract illustration, but there's no explanation for that on the back end. Now let me turn on accessibility mode by pressing Alt+1 once more, and we'll go over those elements. You can now see that the ARIA attribute is now allocating the correct description for what is going to be prompted or open once you press on that link. And it says Facebook, new window. Google+, new window. Now this is all being done by our AI all on the session and instantly. So Instagram, new window. The same thing goes with favorites here as well. Shopping cart has now been assigned to it correctly. We did Abercrombie & Fitch, I believe. So Abercrombie & Fitch, now you can see the alt tag, Abercrombie dark. This is literally referencing tens of millions of data sets that we have not only in our database, but also other sources, in which it takes those images and deciphers through that image by referencing those data sets what exactly is found in the picture, and then create it into raw text, and then injecting your source code, again, all on the session, which is quite an incredible feat. The same thing goes, sale Black Friday. You can see sale Black Friday sale, illustration design, product page. So it's going to prompt a new product page. And again, this is all being done by the AI. There is absolutely no human intervention. Now, in order to achieve this is as follows. The installation process is by far one of the most beautiful things about the solution. It's one single line of JavaScript code that you install once on your homepage. The interface after installing will instantly display on your homepage. That's where the AI starts kicking in the background. It starts assigning elemental structural roles, alt tags for images, optimization of assistive technologies like screen readers or keyboard navigation only, as we showed you before, and That's all done within 48 hours. So after the 48-hour period, essentially you'll receive an accessibility statement. This is a certification of completion and compliance, if you will. And what it explains is what the solution's done to your website, the browser, assistive technology compatibility, and a feedback form if in case there are any issues that our AI might not be picking up on an element or two. There's a feedback form so that we can, of course, fix that and then automate the process from there. Now, the ongoing maintenance is by far the biggest winner over here, since, as we mentioned also before, websites are dynamic, things break, you add new content, new product pictures, etc. Those two need to be remediated. So that's more cost and money with other alternatives that are out there. So our solution will actually ping the website every 24 hours. And this ensures if there's any changes or adjustments that need to be made, they're also being remediated as you go along to ensure compliance at all times with zero downtime. I'm going to lead back to the presentation. And I'd like to point out that any work that's been done to your website, SEO or web accessibility work, our system will actually ensure that it's not being overridden. So we've taken into account that you've done that for good reason, for SEO or accessibility or otherwise, okay? I wanted to also quickly go over the added benefits apart from the lawsuit mitigation perspective and making your website accessible for people with disabilities. There's also a huge untapped potential. First and foremost, it's the right thing to do. It cultivates a genuinely inclusive culture, not to mention it also is a brand booster. It increases awareness of accessibility and the issues that the disabled community is, of course, currently facing and will continue to face if we make continue to make our websites without compliance. From the lawsuit mitigation, just to kind of capture that once more, is making your website accessible, of course, helps you avoid litigation, as we learned before. And from an SEO perspective, time spent on a website is a huge factor for SEO. So by having your website accessible means that people with disabilities will come in, understand that it's accessible, and will take more time on your website. It's even reported 26% of the population have disabilities within the US alone, as we'll see in a second from the CDC. And what happens is that when somebody with disabilities comes into your website, they find that it's inaccessible, they automatically leave. So it increases your bounce rate, decreasing your ranking in the SEO, and of course, less business comes with that. As far as the overall potential from a business perspective and market share, the CDC reports that 26%, as I mentioned before, of Americans have some sort of disability that disables them from utilizing the internet efficiently. You're looking at 61 million Americans here. This is also a $200 billion a year spending power and growing with population growth. If you're looking at on a global scale, we currently have 1.3 billion people with disabilities, and with that, an $8 trillion a year spending power. So as we said, fully automated solutions provide complete compliance using artificial intelligence, drastically reducing cost and time, and providing ongoing maintenance automatically. So what's the next step? Now, I'm sure many of you are asking yourself if your website is compliant or not. That's a very fair question. The answer might surprise you, but we will provide every attendee an accessibility site audit to truly understand your website current level of accessibility and compliance. And this assessment is valued at $1,000 and completely free of charge. So please just ensure to contact us at sales@netsourceinc.com. And of course, at the number below is 800-709-3240.
Before we go forward, I wanted to actually give the URL where someone can go. It's netsourcemedia.com/ADA-check. So that's netsourcemedia.com/ADA-check. If you go there, just fill out the form on that page, and we will create an assessment for you and send that to you and get in contact with you to discuss the results. So that's pretty straightforward. Before we go, there is one question here that I wanted to run in past you, Eli. This is, let me see here. Does the software prevent me from getting a demand letter, or why shouldn't I just wait until I receive a demand letter and then get the software in place? So I wanted to find out your thoughts about that question.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. Just like an insurance policy, you definitely don't want to wait to get an insurance policy because by the time it's too late, you can't actually get an insurance policy and you're done for. So the best way to go about this is, first of all, having a compliance solution in place, of course, will be the best route to go. By the time you hit litigation, 99% of the time, and you look at pacer.gov, by the way, in the official registry to show you that people, that wait for litigation or are served a demand letter and lawsuit, they ultimately lose 99% of the time. I think that up until this point, a huge issue has been that a lot of SMBs, it's been out of reach to pay for remediation to make their websites accessible because of the sheer cost and time that's involved in that. So now that you have a solution like this one, it kind of makes it a no-brainer in my opinion. But yes, to go the preemptive route is definitely the best place to go. I've seen over 100 cases specifically where people said, "I'll be awaiting, I'll take my time in waiting for this," and eventually they get nipped by it.
If anyone has any questions, obviously they can contact us at the number on the screen. Again, I want to refer you to the assessment. That's $1,000 value. We're doing those at no cost, and you can fill out the form on netsourcemedia.com/ADA-check. Eli, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. I know you went through a
Thank you.
speed talk session there, talking as fast as
Yeah.
you can to get this done. I appreciate it. I know that everyone has to get back to their day here, so thanks again. And
I hope it wasn't too fast, but thank you for having me. Yes. Yeah.
yeah, thanks for the demo and everything else. So have a good day. I
Thank you very
appreciate it.
much.
Thank you all for attending. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.